Welcome.
Hello.
My name's Goose.
My name's Gabby.
And you are listening to the Investor Lab, the auditory epicenter for passionate people looking to create a life of freedom, choice, and abundance. Mm-hmm. How are you today, Gabby?
I'm okay, Goose. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm always good. I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit frustrated just before. We're slightly delayed coming into this episode, just in the recording of it, because we were having all these tech meltdowns. It was like
it's a bit of tech problem.
Keyboard wouldn't work, internet wouldn't work, all of this kind of stuff. And I was just saying
it's
to you,
not fun when that happens, is it?
No, I was actually just saying just before we started recording this, I was like, I like to consider myself a fairly sophisticated guy, but when technology breaks down, or or maybe it's a better way to put it, when I struggle to operate technology properly, I feel like I'm about 70, and I'm cursing all of the millennials. Oh, this darn technology doesn't work.
The youths.
The youths.
The youth.
I feel like a Luddite, and it really upsets me on a deep level. But aside from that,
actually, that's really quite funny because we finally bought a new MacBook, and now you're on MacBook number 3.
Yeah.
Because you've had to go back and get them replaced.
It was 3 in 30 days.
Because they've just broken down.
3 MacBooks in 30 days.
It's still baffling to me. How does that happen?
Insane. But the other reason I'm very good, before we get into today's topic, the other reason I'm very good, and this is not sponsored, but I am passionate about coffee. I love coffee. And today we're drinking a Sidamo, Ethiopian Sidamo, which is single origin from, unsurprisingly, Ethiopia. Beautiful. It's kind of like got black tea, toffee overtones. It's quite good.
I'm getting apricot.
Apricot, bit of stone fruit. Anyway, so...
I hope you're all coffee drinkers, otherwise you just sound like total idiots.
Tech allergic coffee drinkers. No, it's
the best kind of people.
Exactly. Now, what we want to talk about today is something we're extremely passionate about. So I have no idea how long this episode is going to go for because I am warming up to have a rant. I've done my stretches.
You don't rant.
I've done my stretches. I'm getting ready to get into it. Now, the reason that we are so passionate about this is because it's affected us personally. So what do we want to talk about today, Gabby?
We're going to talk about trust.
Yeah. And how to know who to believe. So where this has come from, just a little stimulation, a little backstory as to why we're actually even doing this episode. So yesterday, we got an email. We get emails all the time. People contact us via the website and all this kind of stuff. We got an email from a guy who was saying, hey, I'd really love to connect, from a company, Wealth something, it sounded like a financial planner maybe or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he was saying, I'd love to connect. I'd love to, speak to you about, referral partnerships and all of this kind of stuff, as that happens in business. And we're like, okay, great, awesome, fantastic. Let's have a chat. Tell us a little bit about what you do. Mm-hmm. And then he started telling us, he started telling us, I've got this great thing going on. I buy stock directly off developers and then we sell it to investors and all of this kind of stuff. And which is fine. Developers need salespeople. That's not the issue. The issue is, though, that the whole framework around the way he was presenting himself in business and professionally was as someone who was there to guide and help investors, when really he has the developer's interests at heart. Have you got anything to say on that, Gabby?
I mean, if anyone can picture Goose and I reacting to that email, I think we both looked at each other with just
disgust,
dropped jaws. Because unfortunately, though, we do come across this quite a lot. But it's still just, again, like you said, it's the first impression that they give is, we help investors, thumbs up, look at me, I'm a nice guy. And then you just go one layer deeper and it's like, well, yeah, I do that by making a ton of cash under the table.
Yeah, exactly right. And look, the thing is, I've got absolutely no problem with real estate salespeople. I've got no problem with developers. I have no problem with any of it. I think it's all fantastic. What I have a massive and deeply rooted and unwavering hate for is the lack of integrity.
Yeah.
And I don't use that word lightly. Hate. for the lack of integrity. Because what happens out there in the marketplace is you get a lot of these kind of people who they'll even call themselves buyer's agents. They'll call themselves buyer's agents, financial advisors, wealth strategists. There are a lot of different names out there. And when you're someone looking for guidance and advice, looking for a trusted advisor to help you on your journey, these are the kind of things you look for. You're like, oh, a wealth planner, someone who's going to help take me to where I want to be. And then all the while, they have not got your best interests at heart. And it's quite frankly disgusts me. We were actually at an event last night, were we not?
Yeah, we were. We were at an event with a friend of ours who was running an event in Sydney. And, it came up. We did a bit of a round table. It came up. There were a couple other people in real estate there. It wasn't a real estate event. But there's a sales agent who's based in Sydney CBD, I think.
Northern Beaches, I think.
Northern Beaches.
Yeah, something like that.
So, through the event, it was a couple of hours and we kind of were noticing like how people in our industry were interacting. And then at the end, our friend was like, oh, you got to meet, I forget his name, but you guys have got to meet.
His name doesn't matter. His name doesn't matter. You got to meet, like you're both in real estate, you can help each other out, like he's in sales, you guys buy, like surely that's a thing where people help each other. So like, cool, all right, well, let's talk to this guy. He's a recommendation from another friend. And, surface, like first kind of couple of sentences were really like friendly and like, oh, this guy seems on it. Like he's actually got like, he works across a couple of states, like he's built teams across a couple of states. Yeah, like cool. Us. And we were like, oh, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah. And then he went into, because we're like, oh, okay, well, who do you help? How do you help them? How do you see like your point of difference? And he basically said, well, like I get a lot of people that come to me and go, look, I've got like $500,000 and I want a 7% return. What can I do? And he goes, you know what? I know the people. I've got these developers that I work with in Canberra. Go and buy something in Canberra and I'll sell it to you and then I'll make comms. And then he kind of laughed about the money he'd make. And we were just looking at each other like, oh, like abort this conversation, abort.
Yeah,
it's hard because they approach and a lot of people have this energy where they think that they're doing the right thing and they think because they're in real estate that they're helping people in real estate, they're helping people get wealth and they're helping people buy investments, but they just like they don't actually think about what's best for that person.
The parting comment when we were like, yeah, cool, nice to meet you, thank you. Nice. The parting comment was like, yeah, let's connect and then let's all make some money because that's what it's all about, right? And then we were like, yeah. So anyway, so
mind you, this is at about 10 p.m., which is way past our bedtime.
Well, way past our bedtime. So look, the thing is, the point is, there are a lot of people out there who I think misrepresent themselves and also misrepresent the people they should or purport to be taking care of. We take it quite seriously, the custodianship over someone's journey. I take it deeply personally, actually, deeply really personally. And which I refuse to change about that. I have been told to become more detached, and I'm just like, no, it's not how I want to live my life. Now,
I just can't imagine you doing that.
No, not at all. Now, where this is all coming from, and I think it's very easy for us to say, oh, look at all these other people, and aren't they shit? Now, we're also in the same industry. And what we see online and, I just like to point out, we've been getting amazing feedback for this podcast, right? And if you are enjoying this podcast, please let us know because it really genuinely, deeply inspires us to want to keep doing it and to want to provide value and to want to help and guide and support your journey in any way we can. And the reason we started this, not just podcasts, but the business. Now, so just finish off what I was saying. We get feedback online, people commenting on Facebook stuff where they're like, spruikers and all of this kind of stuff. And I think it's kind of like fair enough to go.
It is kind of fair enough.
It is kind of fair enough. Like, let's not let's not beat around the bush. If you don't know us, how can you differentiate whether you should trust us or not?
Particularly if you see us through like a Facebook ad.
Yeah.
Because that's where we do a lot of our advertising. It's fair enough in the marketplace that if you don't know us and you don't like us, then you're probably not going to trust us at that point. So.
Fair enough. Yeah. And I also, just on that, I think it's quite funny that when people see you advertising, hey, we're a business, we run a business. In case you're listening to this and you're not quite sure what we do, we run a real estate buyer's agency service. No, we do not take commissions from developers. No, we do not take third-party commissions from anyone. We're a full client-focused, client success-focused business. But when people see us advertising, they instantly think, oh, well, these guys are dodgy because they're advertising. It's like, well, that's how you operate a business. Mm-hmm. You need to let people know what you do and what your services are. And, I think that anyone who's interacted with us in any way, online, offline, out of space, whatever that is going to realize that we operate with a high degree of integrity. But it takes time for people to understand that. So I thought it would be really interesting for us to talk a little bit about why we started this. And actually, not just why we started this, but actually how we started this.
You're going to drop the veil, are you?
I am. And this is actually a story that we have never even... And I know that we're like, 10 minutes in or whatever. I know this is going to be a long one. We might even have to cut this into 2 episodes. But I don't care because I want this to be psycho in its levels of depth, vulnerability, and value. So... feel free to jump in whenever you want on this story. But this is the reason I'm sort of dancing around a bit is we have never actually really fully shared this story with anyone.
I don't even know what you're going to say.
Really? Crikey. Maybe I haven't even shared it with Gabby. But so we've kind of talked quite a lot with, in general about how we kind of started. We bought an off-the-plan apartment. We got spooked too. We walked into an apartment sales room. And we're
very shiny.
Very shiny. Bottles of
matte black cupboards.
Oh, it's nice. Bottles of wine, and we're like, how good is this?
It was French champagne.
Yeah, exactly, French champagne. So there was all that kind of stuff. We got screwed to, we got sold to. That's okay. Cool. We learned some pretty massive lessons there. We've kind of covered over some of that stuff before, and we could do a whole nother topic just on that. But what happened in that moment was a big transition for us. So the day that we signed the contract, we went to literally about an hour after we signed the contracts for that apartment, we went to a property investment seminar. So I don't want to go into the names of these courses. I don't think that's it's not about naming and shaming. I just wanted to share the story. But
it was kind of the philosophy of like Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, exactly.
The Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah, exactly. And so, we went there like an hour after we just sort of signed the contract for this off-the-plan apartment and went, oh, cash flow. Oh, what about all these other ideas? Oh my God, what have we done? And this was like this massive light bulb moment, which really was a huge kickstart for us. It was a massive catalyst in our entire journey. So we went really, 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 really deep. We wanted to know everything. We wanted to know how to do it, how to become successful for our own purposes. We wanted to break free from the life that we were in. We wanted to find more freedom, choice, abundance, significance, transformation, all of these things that if you're listening to this, you're probably chasing as well in your own life. We wanted that too. Now, we, like anything, went pretty deep. Anything we do, we like to do about 150%, 170%. Now, there were a number of different property investment courses. We went to seminars and we signed up for... We went to one seminar which had 6 different speakers, and I think we signed up for 4 different property investment courses in one day.
We were hungry.
We were hungry. We were hungry for change.
This. Yeah.
We were hungry for change. We were hungry for hope. We were hungry for opportunity. We were hungry for guidance, advice, success. We wanted all of that stuff that we didn't have. We wanted a better life, and we were determined to get it no matter what happened. Now, what stemmed from that was a very interesting set of events which radically shaped why we're even here and even why we actually have this business called Dashdot. So one of those courses that we signed up for and paid for, we actually never really did anything. We just didn't even really engage with it because we didn't have time. Okay, so that was money that we just threw down the drain.
Yep.
Okay? Cool. All right. Sweet. Damn. Move on. Then there was another one which was very glitzy and very glamorous, and it was all about property options and all of this kind of stuff, and it was very exciting. And then there was another one which was again based around Robert Kiyosaki's kind of stuff as well. So we went through a spate of going to a lot of different, because we signed up to all like the weekend courses and all of these kind of next level things. We're investing. We're like, we've got to invest in our future. Now, one of the ones that we went to, and this is one of the big defining things for us, one of the ones we went to, we didn't have any money. We'd just blown all our money basically on this apartment. We'd blown all our money on these courses, but we were so deeply hungry for change that we were doing whatever we could to try and get ahead, including getting credit cards and all this kind of stuff. So one of the courses that we went to over the course of a weekend kind of really changed everything for us. Not necessarily in a good way, in a great way, right? On day one, they had everyone in the audience, they convinced everyone in the audience to call up their credit card companies and try and get $100,000 limits, get their credit limits extended to $100,000 each.
Made a game of it.
They made a game of it, and they were celebrating. And people were running in after the lunch break. I got it. I got up to $100,000 and all of this kind of stuff. Now, everyone's getting pumped up on the excitement. They're very good. They're very good at the courses. They're very good at the seminars. Very good at exciting people. I mean, hell, I nearly did it. I actually nearly called them up. Gabby was a bit smarter, a bit wiser than me. I'm a bit more,
Luckily, they did give the one caveat they did give was like, unless you're currently going through like a finance application at the moment, we don't recommend doing that. But otherwise, go nuts. So it was just that I said like, no, we're...
Yep.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so that was day one. That should have raised some red flags, and it didn't. Anyway, the principles that they were teaching about property were fairly sound, and they're principles that we adhere to in some way. Today, it was pretty fundamental stuff. It was cash flow positive properties, refinancing equity and all of that kind of stuff. All kind of made sense. The mechanics of it made sense. But here's the thing: so we didn't have any money. And what they were talking about was like a $50,000 mentorship program. And also then you needed money to be able to buy the properties and all of this kind of stuff. And they do a very good job of exciting your trust in them. Now, anyone listening to this is going to be thinking, you idiots, you suckers going to a property spruiking seminar like that, getting sucked in. Let me just tell you, unless you have been in that situation, please do not judge. And I encourage you to actually go into one of those situations and see what happens, because you'll either be amazed or completely disgusted. But either way, I think you'll walk out of it having a different understanding of what goes on in there. Now, where it got to at the end of the weekend is that we were convinced that the only way that we were going to succeed in property is if we signed up for the $50,000 mentorship. Pretty sure it's about $50,000 mentorship program.
Basically pay on the spot as well.
Yeah. It was because they'd got all these people to extend their credit cards up to $100,000, and then at the end when it's like, and the mentorship's only $50,000, just run to the back of the room and boop, 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 boop.
It's normally $100,000, but today you get it for $50,000.
Exactly. So it's a bit of draw your own conclusions there, but I've certainly got my opinions on the integrity. But at the time, you're so caught up in emotion, thinking, oh my God, these people are amazing. We've got to go with them. And so we put down what little money we had. In fact, actually, we maxed out the credit card that we had. That's how we put a deposit down on it. So we ended up paying about half, nearly.
Oh yeah, I think it was 20,000.
Yeah, so we ended up but we couldn't put all that down at once. We had to put down what we had, which was like $5,000.
Yeah, because we didn't do the go and extend your credit card exercise.
Yeah. So we couldn't do the whole whack. I'm so glad. And then we were back at work and we're doing our thing and we're trying to contribute to pay for this. Now, one of the big ways that they purport. Because the thing is, obviously, if you're going to pay $50,000 for mentorship, for most people, that's the kind of deposit you're going to need to start investing, right? The way that they get around that is they tell people that there's all these angel investors out there. There's all these magical people floating around who just want to give you money, and it's super easy. You just basically just introduce yourself and say, I want to go buy a house, and can I have some money and all this kind of stuff. And, that one of the guys had like an investment proposal, which we managed to go, can we get a copy of that so we could model it? And we were like, great. So we came back from that seminar going, we've got it all sorted. Okay, we're going to do this mentorship program. We are going to do this investment proposal. We were making lists of everyone we knew who had money. We were going to go and pitch to them and go, guys, invest with us, and we had to come up with a name and all of this kind of stuff. So we actually, that's when we came up with the name Dash Dot, right? And this is how it all kind of started. Now we were like, yeah, we're going to do all this. And we had all these grand schemes and no idea actually how it worked. And it took us probably a couple of months to sort of start to clock on and go, what are we actually doing here? We keep funneling money towards this program, which if we just took that money and invested it in a property, we'd probably just get further ahead faster. $50,000 for a mentorship program might be great, but you've got to be in a position to be able to afford to do that. So that was kind of where it all started. We tried to unwind out of that and actually had to get involved in massive legal battles. We hadn't received anything. We hadn't, that's a whole nother story. But the moral here is that we've been there. We've been through the process of having our money, I don't want to say taken from us, but we've been in those kind of tricky situations with spruikers who have taken advantage of our emotional position at the time, our naivety, our hopefulness, our desire for change. But it didn't end there. So we had signed up for another course as well. And this was based around property options. Now, property options work. There's nothing wrong with property options. It's great. It's a great strategy. Okay, but again, the levels of wealth, the simplicity of the process that gets purported in all of these kind of environments is just not necessarily rooted in the reality of day-to-day existence. So we were then like, we're going to option all of these farmlands that are going to go become developed, and we're going to make millions and all of this kind of stuff. And anyway, what happened with that one is that, again, we got convinced to upgrade to an even higher tier category. We didn't have the money, right? So we said, look, we don't have the money, but we definitely want to do this thing. It was like another $50,000, believe it or not. So we said, look, we don't have any money, but like here's like a holding deposit of like a couple of grand, all right, on a credit card. And then we said, well, let's work out the rest next year. Okay, and then over the course of a few months, they were sequestering money off the credit card using different bank accounts. And the reason I want to share this story is not to try and highlight the fact that we've gone to property seminars and been stupid with money. The reason I want to purport this story is that these are people that are out there in the marketplace who are purporting to help people. And from our personal levels of experience, that has not rung true to be the case. So, amongst all of this kind of learning, we'll call it, all of these learning lessons that we had, we were also reading a lot of books, and there was also good factual information. There was good fundamental mechanics, property stuff. Like there was great stuff to learn, but just bad structures to be involved in, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. So amongst all that, we were actually becoming quite knowledgeable about property. We were deeply passionate about it. At one point, we had every wall in 2 living rooms in the house we were in covered in planning maps, just studying zoning laws across Melbourne, all kinds of stuff. We went super, super, super deep. And it was amongst all of this and around that time that we actually really started doing our own research, building out tremendously complex spreadsheets to analyze the statistics of every LGA in the country and all of this kind of stuff. And it was really forming the framework of what became Dash Dot, the buyer's agency. So although that concept hadn't quite been born at that stage. So we were just thinking, we want to get ahead. And I guess after we got burned again, we were thinking, we were taking stock and we were like, you know what, we actually learned quite a lot here. And then that's when we looked around at our friends and family and realized, oh, well, we've actually accelerated massively in our knowledge and our skills and our capabilities. You know, we'd bought more property by that point, all that kind of stuff. And we realized that actually the greatest gift that we can give is to try and help people and guide people through that mess and that noise so they don't make the same mistakes we did. We've actually got clients who've actually have walked a similar path and have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because they've been involved in some of these programs. And we're sitting there trying to actually help them unpack and unwind all of that mess. And the reason I share all of that, again, which is I hope I don't sound like an idiot. I hope I don't sound like an idiot. Because in hindsight, it's very easy to go, ha, 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 you young, dumb idiot. But at the time when you are so deeply unhappy with where you are in life and you are so committed to wanting change and wanting something better out of your life, it's you try anything. You try anything. So it's off the back of that. It's off the back of having nothing and then lost even more. It took us a long time to recover from those debts that we accumulated in those courses. It was through that we actually, we were inspired to start Dashdot, the buyer's agency. And yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit lost, a little bit emotional actually. A little bit emotional.
I feel like a big piece of this is it's anyone can be in that state of vulnerability and unhappiness, and it was essentially high functioning depression is kind of the state that we were in at that time, where you do seek out other options. You inside that there's a better way, and that you're capable of doing more, and you hear that properties are a thing that works for people, and you're like, that's going to be my North Star. That's the little glimpse of light that I've got. So we went chasing that. We held on to that, and we kind of were in that vulnerable state where you want to believe everything that is told to you. You don't really question what's coming up because you're like, no, these people are going to help me get to that little glimpse of light that I can see in my life, because everything else is a bit shit right now. But these people are going to help me. And anyone can fall prey to that. Anyone has the capability of having those moments or those periods of time where they're just hopeful that someone's got their back. They're hopeful that somebody else can help pull them out of where they are. And I don't think the point of this isn't for us to say all property seminars are just
not at all. No, there's amazing ones out there. There's some great programs with great information, great knowledge. There's some amazing guides, mentors, educators, and teachers out there. There are fantastic ones. Yeah, and like I said, a lot of our learning, a fair chunk of our learning to date was sparked by that. And it is actually, there is some good content in a lot of those, education options. But it's just about understanding your emotional state at a point in time might not always have the right filters on for who you can trust. When you're feeling very down and feeling very sad and feeling unsure about how to make the most of your life, you're going to put your trust in anyone who comes past and holds their hand out to you, because otherwise you're just on the ground hoping and and waiting. But if someone walks past and says, hey, I can show you the way, you're more likely to say yes. Exactly. And I think just to give it some context as well, as a young couple trying to start their property journey, I think we tallied up that we tanked about not tanked. We learnt. We spent in 12 months about $100,000 on education. Some of it good and some of it bad. But what spawned out of that was a burning fire within both of us to help create change.
Yep.
And that's become the driving force around what we're doing. I mean, look just to I want to kind of share with people, I guess, like our mission statements and what we're actually here to do. Because the biggest problem that I see is that the vast majority of the Australian population live in a state of scarcity. So the vast majority of the Australian population lives in a state of scarcity, which drives a growing rift between social classes. And there's a lot of problems that we see in the world and in Australia, and I believe that this is what kind of fuels it. It fuels the ongoing socio-political and environmental issues and all of that kind of stuff, which can be solved through innovation, affluence, and collaboration, through a better society. I mean, I always wanted to change the world, and I wanted to go into politics and do all this kind of stuff. And personally, and Gabby and I share this vision and this belief that if we can empower every person in Australia to achieve more in their own lives and to improve the standard of living for every Australian, that's what we want to do. We don't want to just help a couple of people buy a property. We want to improve the standard of living for every Australian. By helping people to attain personal wealth, we're going to help empower the national community to shift to a state of abundance. And the result's going to be a more enriched and compassionate and philanthropic society. This is going to be a society that can give. Mm. And, if you ask anyone, if you said, if I gave you $10 million right now, what would you do? Now, some people would go, oh, yeah, I'll go buy a car and a boat and a house and maybe I'll buy a property portfolio and all this kind of stuff. Eventually, you're going to have some money, right? And you're going to be like, I want to help people. When I talk to people and they're like, and I'm like, well, why do you want to achieve financial freedom by the time you're 35? Well, because I want to do other things in my life, things I enjoy. I want to go and help people. I want to help homeless people, whatever that is. If you can create enough abundance, you have the opportunity to step out of scarcity. And you have the opportunity to help other people. Now, you don't have to wait until you're rich. You don't have to wait until you've got just boundless amounts of money. You can start doing that stuff now. But it's about shifting that mindset from scarcity to abundance. I believe that if we can help people do that, that will have a greater impact for social change than any other medium. It'll have a greater have a greater impact than protesting. It'll have a greater impact than lobbying governments. It'll have a greater impact than anything that we can do on this earth. And if that is the legacy that I can leave behind, if that's the legacy that Gabby can leave behind, that we managed to change society by creating hope, by creating love, by creating abundance, that's the kind of world I want to leave behind. And so that's why our mission is to really help people to using the power of investing, business, education, however we can. We've got a lot of ideas of where we want to go with this in the future, but it's really using all those mechanisms to create unprecedented levels of, financial and holistic wealth success. It's not all about money. It's about creating a better life. And it's about creating a better existence, not only for you, but for your community. And that community doesn't need to be the people in your town. That community can be the people in your life. That community can be the people across the country. So this passion to want to see that permeate, to see that positivity permeate through the fabric of society that's the thing that when I wake up in the morning and I think, what the hell am I doing? Everyone has days like this, right? And you're like, what the hell am I doing? This sucks. Everything sucks. I don't want to do this. Everyone has days like that. I get up some days and everyone sees me as being very positive, but I get up some days and I think, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to stay in bed. And the thing that drags my ass out of bed every single day is the fact that what I am trying to do is change the world. And I'm trying to do that by trying to make people happy, not dig a coal mine, not trying to burn anything down, trying to help people improve their lives on a deep personal level. So I know we've gone off on a little bit of a tangent. I knew that we were going to rant. But for anyone listening, I hope that this kind of helps to shed a little bit of light on what we're doing, but also I hope that you've been able to take some lessons out of it. Maybe you can relate to it in some way. Because everyone has made mistakes. Everyone has been in a situation where you have put your faith in another person and that faith, for whatever reason, has been lost. You know, and you could even look at the other person involved in that situation, relationship, or whatever, and go, I know that they're not a bad person, but it doesn't matter. I've lost faith. They just couldn't manage themselves, for example. They don't necessarily have to be malicious. But we've all been in situations where you're like, I have lost faith. I feel like I am more barren than when I started this journey with this person or this relationship or this situation. So the question then is, and I'm certain that people will be able to relate to that. I'm certain that every single person who hears this podcast, whether they have spent $100,000 on property education or not, whether they have, had a bad experience like that or not, they will have some situation that they can relate to where they feel they have lost trust and lost faith. And it was interesting because I was actually in an Uber. Yesterday, day before. And I was talking to the Uber driver, and he's like, oh, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a buyer's agent. And he was like, oh, I knew this buyer's agent. Oh, he was such a dodgy guy. He was just out to like rip people off. And he went on this tirade. And then he continued to tell me about all these other people in his life who had also been, less than desirable, lacked integrity, shall we say. And I was listening to him, and I was like, yeah, well, that's pretty rough. And he's like, and I guess you just got to know, you just can't trust anyone. That's what I've learned. And I stopped him in his tracks. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Man, is that how you want to live your life? He said, well, that's what experience has told me. And fair enough, you can think that way if you want. But if you do think that way, then I would caution you to question the validity of how you want to live your existence. I made a decision a long time ago personally, very long time ago when I was much younger, that I would never lose faith in the human condition, because your belief in the goodness of humans is going to be tested until the day you die. It might be tested by your parents. It might be tested by your children. It might be tested by your friends. It might be tested by your partner. It might be tested by someone in business. It might be tested by someone down the street. But the way you want to show up in the world is what you're going to get back out of the world.
But I think a lot of people have problems as well. Like you're saying about if someone's thinking about working with us or versus someone else. A lot of people kind of take that away and they put it in an environment that has no context. So, as in, instead of, taking the conversations that they've had with, myself or with Goose and just really thinking about, is this what I want to do? Is this who I am? Is this the path I want to take? People will take that. They've got no real confidence in their own instinct, and they take it and they ask other people. Which is, I'm not saying don't go and do that, but it's like if you take it and you go and talk, like if you go and ask your dad, who's like super conservative and super distrustful, you go and take this new concept that you're really excited about to someone like your dad, and then he's going to turn around and be like, nah, sounds like a scam, nah, don't need it, blah, blah, blah. And then instantly you're going to be like, you know what?
Yeah.
They're right. My instinct was wrong. What was I thinking? Because you've had more confidence in their opinion than your own and your own gut feeling. And again, I'm not saying like don't go and get
advice. Get advice. Ask people. Yeah, get advice and ask people.
Yeah, it's just about thinking like we tend to have like a bias for asking people questions based on the response that we want, I think. So it's like if you're unsure about something, you're probably going to take it to someone who is going to say, not sure about that either.
That's a good point.
Then you can go, oh yeah, nah, wrong.
That's a good point, actually, won't you?
Whereas
You'll
if
seek
you-
out the people who confirm the way you want to feel about it.
Yeah. I think it's Emerson has a quote about once you make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen. So it's like if you're in a position where you need to make a decision, you'll find that like the conversations you have afterwards will come into play where they, you know, justify whatever that decision is. And I think it's the same when you're on the fence about a decision. You'll go to the places where secretly somewhere you're trying to manipulate the outcome you want without directly making that decision. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I think really, basically, if I could just sum that up, you're basically saying you have to listen to your gut. Feel free to get other people's opinions on it, but unless the guidance that you're seeking, unless those people have the same perspective that you do, it's going to be very hard for them to be objective.
Yeah.
Right. So, for example, if you were to go and inspect a car, if you were to go and want to go buy a new car, you took it for a test drive, you felt it, you had to go, all of that kind of stuff, you sussed it out, and then you went to a friend who didn't even know what the car was, and you were like, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying this car. What do you think?" And they would be like, "Well, I don't know. Like, tell me about it." And you're like, "Well, it's got an engine and it does this and it's really expensive or whatever." They'll be like, "What? You could just get like a second-hand car that has an engine and wheels and does the same things, and it's down the road." Like, what? They won't necessarily understand the context of the conversation that's going on in your own mind. So,
yeah, I think that applies to like research as well. Again, do your research. Do research, but think about the way that you're framing it, because again that bias comes in. So if you have an example like eating apples, if you're unsure about eating apples but you think it's a good idea, you're probably going to Google something like, what are the benefits of eating apples? And then you'll get a whole bunch of research that are all the positives of eating apples. But if you're considering eating an apple and you don't think it's a good idea, you're like hesitant about it, you're going to be like, what's the downside of eating apples? Into Google.
Is eating apples bad for me?
Yeah. Yeah. And then Google's going to come back with all the negatives about eating apples. And then you'll be like, oh, well, I've done my research and Google says, you know, that was negative. It's just about, again, do your research, but try to be more aware of your bias, trying to find the solution.
And I would just, I'm mindful of time, I would just probably say as well, just question, you know, like just question not only what you're doing, but also just question the integrity of the people that you're working with. And there should be no problem with that. You know, and when I say that, I don't mean be distrustful and doubting. I don't believe that. That would contradict the things that I've just said. But just ask where their interests are and find out where their best interests are. If their best interests, if your best interests are at heart, fantastic, awesome. And your best interests can align with their best interests. They don't have to be too polarized or too you know, they don't have to be two separate things. That somebody else's objectives and your objectives can overlap. But where you want to find out is, you know, for example, you know, we have people come to us and they say, "Oh, well, you know, I found this other buyer's agent, in inverted commas, who does it for free." So I'm like, yeah, well, who's paying that person? You know, they're not just philanthropists.
Has that happened recently?
Yeah, it has happened recently. It happened in the last week. Actually, it happened twice in the last week. I've had people say to me, "Well, I spoke to this other company and they said they'll do it for free." And in fact, I had somebody else said, "Well, I found this other company and they do it for," I can't remember, but it was still multiple thousands of dollars. "Oh, but it's really good because the developers pay them." And I was like, "What?" And the person I was speaking to was actually a friend. And they were telling me, they're like, yeah, it's really cool because that means I don't have to pay it all because the developer's paying them. And I was like, whoa, man. Who do you think's do you think they're genuinely guiding you to the right decision that's going to progress your journey? Or are they just, you know, looking to do a deal?
I think with that, it's like nothing's ever free. It's like you either pay for it now or you pay for it down the line. You get something for free monetarily now, but you're going to pay for it down the line.
100%.
Yep.
Okay, so just to wrap this up. So we have covered integrity. We went pretty deep and wide on how and why we even started Dashdot. we delved into our story a little bit, got pretty vulnerable there. Don't know what people think about that. Spoke a little bit about our mission and our purpose here on Earth. We also covered, how to approach trust and faith and belief in the human condition, and how to try and decipher truth from fact. And just remember that failure is only ever temporary. So you've got to test the waters. You've got to have an unquenchable desire to seek newness in life. Otherwise, you're going to just shrivel up, I believe. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of failure. Just accept that failure is an opportunity to grow. And I think that will bolster your decision to be able to invest in positivity in your life and in your community. And just try and work with people who've got your best interest at heart. Doesn't need to be us, that's fine. But whoever you work with, whether it be in property or whether it be in whatever, who cares? Could be your girlfriend, could be whoever. Invest in relationships is probably a better way to put it. Invest in relationships with people who have your best interest at heart. So, on that note, I think that's a wrap. I don't have a quote at the end of this one. I don't have anything. We don't have any profound way
let's just breathe and exhale.
Nice. Cool, guys. Well, anyway, so if you have enjoyed this, if you enjoy hanging out with us, if you want to be part of a community of like-minded individuals, people seeking success in life, business, real estate, all of the fun stuff, all of the good things, creating a life of freedom, choice, and abundance, join us in our Facebook group. So that is facebook.com/groups/The Investor Lab. Also, like this, subscribe to it. If you're watching this, listening to it, give us a rating, give us a review. We want to try and spread this out to as many people as we can. It's early days yet, but we're so pumped to be getting great feedback. So if there is something you've liked about this episode or any episode, feel free to email us directly on hello@dashdot.com.au. You'll get both myself and Gabby. We'd love to hear from you.